Before I get into today's video, remember to follow me on Twitter. So my Twitter, the link is in the description below. You can also find me. My handle is @JacksonKruger. Come over, say hi, and anyways, back to your regularly scheduled video. All right, let's talk about Baker Mayfield going to the Carolina Panthers. I think it's an interesting situation, and I want to talk about sort of the fit itself, kind of some interesting things about what he could bring to a Matt Rule system. But before we do that, we have to talk about him as a player. And I think what I want to talk about first and foremost, I'm going to show a play that I've shown a couple of times already on this channel, but it's an important play. It's a great example of kind of the issues that happened with Baker Mayfield that he could control. A lot of people are going to bring up the injury, and I think that to some degree that is fair, but there was also some stuff like this where it's going to be a zone coverage play, a cover 3 zone play, which means there's only a single safety deep. The concept that the Browns are running is essentially entirely dependent on what that safety does. If the safety stays deep, you throw it over the middle. If the safety covers over the middle, you throw it deep. That's very simply what you want to do here. Right when this play begins, what you're going to notice is that Baker Mayfield, he ran to play action, and at this point, the safety is clearly running deep. I mean, this isn't even a question as to what decision you should make. And I should also mention, this was in an important game. The Browns still had an outside shot at the playoffs at this point. This was on Christmas Day. This is a very important game that the Browns had a real shot at winning, and making a decision like this can be really damaging because watch what Mayfield's going to do. He chucks one up deep, which doesn't throw it to the guy who was wide open, and instead throws it to double coverage, which results in an interception. Now, again, making a bad read happens all the time. It's not the end of the world. But to me, this is just a very clear and obvious poor read. And this is kind of what Mayfield does, quite frankly. This is not the only example I've seen of Mayfield kind of taking a chance instead of just doing the smart play. You have to be able to run an offense, and you just can't make these kind of mistakes. It's that simple. So, I'm not trying to say that there's nothing he brings to the table. And going over to a play like this, some of his issues last year were just plays that I'm willing to say the injury might have been a factor. Like something like this. It's a pretty simple concept. It's a third down and very long that the Browns are in, so it's kind of a prevent defense the Packers are in. For Mayfield, the second route closest towards the sideline, that's really the route he's going to be looking towards. Look at how right when this play begins, you do notice that there is a window for Mayfield to make this throw. I mean, this is as open as you'll ever see a player get in the NFL. The one downside is it is a bit farther away, and Mayfield, there is a little bit of pressure. He doesn't feel like he can step up in the pocket, kind of has to throw off his back foot a little bit. And as you see, because he throws off his back foot, he kind of overcompensates, throws it too high, results in an interception. It's fair to say maybe the injury had something to do with this play, right? I'm willing to at least acknowledge that as a possibility. None of us know. None of us are, well, I guess some of us might be doctors, but even if you're a doctor watching this, which that would be cool, but if you are, let me know in the comments below. But even if you are, you don't know the actual details of the injury, so you don't know if this is true, and, again, these things are complicated. So the hope is that while that first play might still happen, and it probably will still happen when he's in a Panthers uniform, at least you can hope that the second play might not, and that's where you're gambling on upside with a quarterback, which is what you should be doing if you don't have a quarterback, which I don't think the Panthers do. Take a chance on Mayfield and hope that these issues were due to the injury. Because now we have to go over to some Panthers tape. And let's talk about the first couple of weeks with the Panthers, because things went really well for those first 3 weeks. And it was kind of, not the toughest competition. They played the Texans, the Jets, and then the toughest competition was against the Saints. But the Saints were very, they did not have everybody there. There's kind of weird circumstances in this game, which I think is fair to say. It's, not to make excuses, but that's probably a fair excuse for the Saints and why they had a lackluster day. Anyway, this is how the Matt Rule concept is, or really I should say the Joe Brady concept, which who knows if they're going to do the same thing. They might mix things up, and this entire video is pointless, but I'm assuming if Matt Rule hired Brady, he did it because he at least liked some of what he does, and at least liked some of how this stuff worked, where what's going to happen on this play is you have a quarters coverage, and you see how this concept can work. The two receivers lined up closest towards the sideline can push back the two New Orleans players who are in charge of covering deep. You also have a halfback who's going to run out to the flat underneath. And then there's the third receiver who could be the key guy here. You see at the end of that route, there's really going to be no New Orleans player left to cover that section. So that's how this can work for Carolina. Look at how right when this play begins, what you're going to notice is exactly that. That route is open. Sam Darnold reads this. This is how Sam Darnold looked actually competent his first 3 weeks. Darnold is able to make this throw and they're able to pick up a first down. Now, some people will say, okay, cool, fine, but it's a new offensive coordinator, so who cares? Again, I brought up the fact that, it's possible a scheme will be relatively similar just because it is still the same head coach. But the other thing is that the players are still similar. And, guys got banged up and quite frankly just didn't play as good as the season went on. But the hope is you have a plethora of wide receivers who can just run routes effectively. This kind of stuff can work because these kind of routes rely less on you needing one receiver to be elite and more on 3 receivers just doing their job, like what happened here, where all 4 receivers involved in that play just did their job well enough to get one guy open. The flip side, of course, is going to be what happened later on, because obviously for Carolina, it did fall off the rails. And what happened when things fell off the rails? Well, the Joe Brady scheme kind of got figured out. Teams knew what to do, how to counteract it on this play. It's essentially the same idea. It's just, one less player running deep, but that's fine because there's one less player covering deep for the Giants. So same idea. One player pushes the cornerback further deep. Another player tries to get the other defensive player who's in that area to run further shallow. And then a third player can kind of run in between them and get open. Again, it's that section. That's where this play could potentially work. As you see, right when this play begins, Darnold takes the snap, Darnold looks downfield and notices that the Giants are covering deep. They're not giving up that section of the field that Darnold wanted to throw to. Darnold, to his credit, does notice this. That's now the play that you have to make. You have to throw checkdowns, but this is kind of the issue with if you have a concept and really a scheme designed to just have several guys who can play. The issue is that sometimes when a defense just knows how to counteract it, it becomes really difficult then to have your own counter if you're the Panthers. Once your scheme kind of gets figured out, you don't have much to work with. Darnold does hit the check down, and check down drops it. Not sure if it would have been a first down anyways. They had to get to the 22 on that play. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I think the concern is the receivers are going to have to play better for Carolina for us to see kind of this scheme work out perfectly, which could happen. Again, I think that's very reasonable, but that's kind of the thing that has to happen. So yeah, that's what I think of Baker Mayfield to the Carolina Panthers. There's some stuff to like about it. There really is, and I do think there's a chance that this can work out well. There's also some issues, and again, these projection stuff is always difficult because teams don't exactly tell you, hey, just so you know, this is our playbook that we're going to be using for the upcoming season. Here you go, all the YouTubers out there, take a look at this. Not exactly how that works out. So there's a bit of projection in there as well. But even if it's not the same scheme, I imagine it'll be a scheme using the same way because you have the same players. So typically you build a scheme around the players. I think that might happen, which will be, will cause some benefits and some disadvantages as well for Baker. That's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.